clearly this is a law that has enormous religious and ethical concerns and implications. And this panel is composed of people who have really looked into the ethical and religious issues and will address it from that point of view. Our first panelist is Jennifer Hawkins. She's a bioethicist at Duke University. Professor Hawkins?
Thank you for having me. I hope I can be heard. So I'll just start. I'll say one little thing at the outset. I talked to various numbers of the panelists at the beginning, and there are people here with various views. I think I may be the only one here who really can honestly say I'm on the fence. I don't have an agenda. I think that there are important things to be said, and I'm quite interested in this topic. I want to start with three very common arguments that one hears over and over again whenever people begin to discuss this issue. And I bring these up because I personally don't think they're very strong, and I'm hoping to get them out there and explain to you why I don't think they succeed. The first thing I often hear people say is that death, in and of itself, just because of what death is, couldn't possibly be good for a person. They just say it can't be. You couldn't be better off dead. And in one sense, that might be true if by good you mean choice-worthy in itself, apart from the circumstances. But I think we know that good here means the best alternative in the circumstances, and sadly, there are people for whom death is the best choice, if their only alternative is a life filled with intense suffering. So I reject the basic claim that death is never good for a person, that it could never be in one's best interests, though it's a sad case when that is true. A second argument that I often hear is that killing is not the proper end of medicine. The end of medicine, people tell me, is sustaining life. Or perhaps, if that's too strong, it's the aim of healing, at least so far as you can. Or perhaps it's the aim of caring for the sick, where the speaker clearly thinks that caring for someone couldn't possibly include helping them end their life. However, I think that such arguments assume that there is currently more agreement about the proper ends of medicine than there really is. And they also overlook the fact that professions like medicine are institutions, and institutions can be changed, and new ends can be adopted for them if enough people independently think those ends are worthy. So by itself, I don't think that argument takes us very far. A third thing people regularly say is that there is an important distinction between killing and letting die. And many people who are opposed to these laws, for one reason or another, want to put even writing a prescription in the category of killing, or you're aiding in killing, therefore you're partly a killer. And they want to say that there's an important distinction, and that while it is sometimes permissible for doctors to allow patients to die, for example, by turning off a respirator, it is not, they say, permissible for physicians to kill. The distinction between killing and letting die is an important one in many areas of our moral thinking, but I don't think it can help us here. Throughout its history, it's a distinction that has always had difficulty with certain kinds of cases, those in which one person or several people withdraw life-sustaining aid from another, thereby causing death. I don't think there is a clear-cut answer to the question, does a physician who unplugs a ventilator at the request of a patient kill the patient or merely let the patient die? We know how death comes about, but I don't think we can classify the case. But if there is no clear answer to that question, then we can't use the distinction by itself to justify the current status quo. Many people explain why what's currently legal is and should be, but why we shouldn't legalize physician-aided dying by saying that what we currently allow is letting die, and that would be allowing killing. But I can't be certain that we don't already allow killing. So I think those get us off to the wrong start. The issues that seem real to me are issues about the consequences, whatever those may be, of allowing the practice. And I want to make it clear, I, at any rate, have no doubt that there are some individuals who would be greatly benefited by having physician-assisted dying legalized. Their deaths would be much better for them. As I see it, the question is simply whether the bad effects on others, if there are any, and I'm not saying there are, would outweigh the good effects for these few. I just don't feel like I know the answer to that question. Until recently, it seemed quite obvious to me that the consequences would most likely not be dire, and that therefore there was no good reason to oppose legalizing physician-assisted dying. And I believe that the consequences we have seen in Oregon are not dire. However, I've come to worry greatly about the ways in which such laws may eventually be challenged and pushed as people try to extend them. And I worry about the way in which, as a society, we recognize and respond to suffering. I'm concerned about our ability to accurately recognize suffering and to help people through it. So if we could be assured that any law legalizing this would be limited in scope to terminally ill patients, which they always say they will be, I'd feel better, but not comfortable still. For I would want assurance not only that the proposed law would be limited to terminally ill patients, but that it has been drafted in such a way that it could resist challenges that might arise later on, challenges aiming to broaden the scope to include all who claim to suffer. And I will stop there. Thank you.
That was Dr. Hawkins, PhD, and now we're going to hear from Dr. Maestro, MD. Jacques Maestro is a board-certified thoracic surgeon, but he's here actually as a representative in this Lenten season of Bishop Burbridge of the Catholic Archdiocese in Raleigh. He's been trained in the healthcare ethics at the National Catholic Bioethics Center. The reason this is Dr. Maestro is an important panelist today is the Catholic Church has been a very eloquent and vociferous participant in the debates at every state where death with dignity legislation has been proposed. Dr. Maestro?
Thank you, Ed. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. As a representative of the Catholic Church of the Diocese of Raleigh, I come to present my opposition to physician-assisted suicide based on the teachings of my faith. By the way, I have no political ambitions. But as a North Carolina physician, I am also compelled to voice my disapproval of this concept from an ethical and moral medical perspective as well. The Catholic faith has always affirmed the immeasurable value of every human life from conception to natural death. This is because we are created in the image and likeness of God. We believe, and sacred scripture confirms to us, that God is the author of life and death, and that our life is a precious gift that we are called to be good stewards of. The intrinsic dignity of every human life is precisely because of this image of God in each of us. Extrinsic qualities for life's dignity, such as race, creed, intelligence, wealth, disability, or even the fact that a suffering person wants his life to be protected or not to be protected, do not diminish the intrinsic dignity of this God-given gift of life. In the state of North Carolina, we have diminished the dignity of human life before by sterilizing inmates and mentally retarded through much of the 20th century. And prior to that, by selling human beings into slavery because of their race. The Catholic faith also teaches that our free will and autonomy, which is also a gift of God, does not give us the right to undermine God's sovereignty and to end life as we choose. The Church has also made it very clear that no one is required to suffer, especially during the process of dying, and that all modern medicine has to offer should be available to the dying person, especially freedom from pain. We are free to use as much pain medication as is required, as long as the intention is the relief of pain and not to bring about an early death. Consistent with this teaching of my church, it should be noted that it is legal in every United States state for an individual to create an advance directive. You've heard of this today. That requires the withdrawal of treatment under any conditions the person wishes, and for a patient to refuse any treatment or to require any treatment to be withdrawn. It is legal to receive sufficient painkillers to be comfortable, and we now know that this will not hasten death. And perhaps least understood for anyone who is dying in discomfort, it is currently legal in any U.S. state to receive palliative sedation, wherein the dying person is sedated so discomfort is relieved during the dying process. Thus, there is already a legal recourse for painful deaths. These alternatives do not raise the serious difficulties of legalizing assisted suicide. The two professional associations representing oncologists in California wrote that legalization of assisted suicide, quote, strikes at the heart of what we do as physicians and adds ambiguity to the physician-patient relationship. Legalization undermines the physician's primary directive to first do no harm. It destroys the trust between the patient and the doctor, and it, under the pretense of providing compassion, relieves a physician of his or her primary responsibility to safeguard patients' lives and to provide comfort to the suffering. In their view, it is the ultimate patient abandonment. That is one reason why physician-assisted suicide is opposed by the World Health Organization, the American Medical Association and its state affiliates, the American College of Physicians, the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization, the American Cancer Society, and other medical organizations. The psychosomatic literature describes demoralization syndrome, which is very common in chronic, life-threatening illnesses, the features of which, hopelessness, helplessness, and despair, fit the profile of the victims of Oregon's law, who are consistently reported not to be in pain or disabled by their allegedly terminal illness, but request assisted suicide because of fears of what might come in the future, helplessness, dependency, becoming a burden. Oregon, in fact, has proven that the only symptom driving requests for assisted suicide is psychological distress. Clearly, the standard of care for depression and demoralization is not a lethal overdose of barbiturates. Only 6% of Oregon psychiatrists are confident that they can diagnose depression with one visit. Yet the Oregon and Washington state definition of a psychiatric consultation permits one visit only. Viktor Frankl, in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, describes his horrifying experiences in Nazi concentration camps. He notes that prisoners in the exact same material circumstances, among the most horrible imaginable, did not all react the same way. Some prisoners purposely killed themselves by walking into electrified fences. Others clung to life and even found joy despite the atrocities daily occurring around them. What made the difference? One way to put it is that man can endure anything if he has a reason to live, and conversely, man can endure little if he has no reason to live. I am convinced that those who seek assisted suicide are begging for love and companionship during their final days, and not finding that resort to the only option that they feel remains, a lonely, isolated, not wishing death, not wishing to be a burden. How sad that we cannot love and attend these brothers and sisters of ours on their journey. Isn't that what each of us wants for ourselves when that time comes, to be loved and to be surrounded by those whom we love? As a physician, I view my function as that of a healer, and if this is not possible, then I am to help one die as peacefully as I can when the time comes, and not when I make it come. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Connie Agretti. She is a pastor in the First Metaphysical Chapel in Bahama, North Carolina, which is north of Durham. And I'm going to exercise a moderator's prerogative to ask Connie a couple of questions. My first question, Connie, is there anything in the faith of the First Metaphysical Church, the theology or the dogma of the church, that would prohibit a congregant from using an assisted suicide convention?
No, there is not. Actually, we believe that we are born in this world, and part of life is when we go back to our natural habitat in the spirit world or the heaven world. We believe that we are all parts of God. When Jesus said, "You too, the same Father liveth in you," we believe that we do have free will, and that we believe that when you're not afraid to die, you're not afraid to live. But in the end, if in the end, under the law, it's 6 months, then every person, we believe, has that compassionate understanding that they should be allowed to go at their will and not have to be able not to burden the family in the way they're going, to be able to have the family there, surrounding them, loving them, and for the patient to also love the family and direct them as to what they would like for their life. We believe the end of life should be compassionate. It should also be known that it's not a choice for everyone. Everyone should have their own free will. Everyone should have the independence of having their end of life by choice and by their understanding. Many people have an easy passing. That's wonderful. That's tremendous. We hope that for everybody. Many people, everyone I know, wants to die in their sleep. Don't we all want that? For those who cannot, we need to be compassionate for them too.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next panelist has come from all the way across the state. Carol Sutton is an advocate for a group called Not Dead Yet. I think you'll see in your program. She has made it her passion to discuss this issue. So, Carol?
Thank you. Shio, Oshikwaju. I'm also Cherokee, and I just greeted you in Cherokee. I'm here, though, not specifically as an ethical or religious representative. Not Dead Yet is a civil rights organization, and we approach this from a civil rights perspective. I find it fascinating sometimes. A friend of mine, Stephen Mendelsohn, just wrote about the ideology of individual choice being as opposed to protecting the vulnerable. And how did this get to be a liberal cause? It's because the Hemlock Society, now known as CNC, has spent a lot of money creating it as a liberal cause. Derek Humphrey, the founder of the Hemlock Society, said, "What can those of us who sympathize with a justified suicide by a handicapped person do to help? When we have statutes on the books permitting lawful physician aid in dying for the terminally ill, I believe that along with this reform, there will come a more tolerant attitude to the other exceptional cases." I don't often agree with Derek Humphrey about anything, but we have seen that this is in fact the case in Oregon and with Dr. Kevorkian in Michigan. What happens is a special class of homicide exists now, and it's not investigated. How do we know what someone actually wanted at that particular moment if it's not investigated? When Janet Adkins died, Kevorkian's first public killing, There were reams and boxes full of files. It was thoroughly investigated. When Thomas Yount died, there was less than half a page. It simply noted that Kevorkian was there. But we were in the courtroom, and we heard what was not aired on the snuff film on 60 Minutes. Tom's last word was wait. So what if he changed his mind at the end of life? At the end, who might not? So what if he changed his mind? His wife said. That's what his wife said. So what? So what means it's murder. You can drive a busload of serial killers through these laws. And as long as they're careful in choosing their victims, old, ill, and disabled, they'll get away with it. Kevorkian almost got away with it. It wasn't until we saw, and the prosecutor and the jury saw in court, Tom say, wait. It's bad law. Tough cases make bad law, and this is bad law. In Oregon, we've seen that there was a case where it was real estate fraud that turned up what may be a murder for profit, but it was never investigated or prosecuted as a murder for profit. Murder, especially murder for profit, is so heinous, there is no statute of limitations. But, well, if the victim was old, ill, or disabled, we'll just let it pass. It's not a dire circumstance. Medicine. Medicine is already ableist. That means that they're prejudiced against disabled people. This reinforces that. It creates a two-tiered system in which people who are basically healthy get different health care than those of us who are not. They would never put a DNR on somebody who was basically healthy without even consulting them. They did that to my husband 3 years before he died. And I about raised the roof. But who do you go to? Oh, it's a mistake. We didn't mean to do that. Well, what if he had died 3 years early? I would have missed all those precious moments with him. Every moment I had with my husband was precious. I would give everything I have to get more of them. Now he's gone. How can you possibly contemplate accelerating that? He asked me several times, just shoot me. Finally, I sat down and said, honey, I love you. I want every moment I can get with you. There's no way I would even contemplate that. How could you if you love that person? Finally, it's bad for families, it's bad for society, but it's catastrophic for disabled people because CNC and all of those people that are advocating this intend to include us. And they intend to include us involuntarily if necessary. Faye Gersh, Barbara Coombs-Lee, they've all said it publicly. And the media lets them get away with saying, oh, that was an unofficial press release. What? It makes us second-class citizens. We already have to fight to get by in society. We don't need more uphills. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Pastor Paul Garretson, who's from a group called Christian Medical and Dental Association. Pastor Garretson, I think, will speak more as a clerical person today.
Thank you for inviting me, Ed. I very much appreciate being allowed to express my thoughts on my research. You know, the topic I want to talk about today is where is the dignity in death on demand? Having cared for my father, David, and my first wife, Sandy, as they both died of cancer, I am compassionate towards what Barbara Mancini went through. The memories of the indignities your family experienced, Barbara, don't easily go away. But you came here today as a representative of Compassion and Choices, a descendant of the Hemlock Society. And that's exemplary of the issue that's at hand. Titles of organizations and names on legislation are altered to make them more socially palatable. But that doesn't change the fact that the most famous use of hemlock wasn't a dignified suicide by Socrates, but in fact his undignified death under duress as an execution. Now our topic today is death with dignity. What is it? I say that this sort of legislation is death on demand. That's what it's really about. And it's undignified, it's unethical, and it's unnecessary. This is not just about a single individual's choice in controlling how they die. Where's the dignity in killing sufferers and calling that improving the medical system? When healthcare practitioners are asked to participate in suicides as an improvement to medicine, this is the ultimate expression of patient autonomy run amok. Suicide is an individual's declaration that their life's not worthy to be lived. The U.S. Supreme Court has wisely opined, however, that doesn't mean that society or the medical profession are improved by agreeing. Where's the dignity in turning medical servants into slaves? European and Canadian courts have already declared death on demand to be a civil right. Thus, judges make legislative opt-out clauses so much vapor. At peril to their livelihood, ideals, and consciences, healthcare professionals who entered medicine to serve and heal will be threatened by the wailing of civil rights violation, and they'll have to assist in suicides. Lawsuits are sure to follow. Now, anyone who can be compelled to help kill another person can be compelled to do anything. Therefore, by definition, death on demand legislation creates medical slaves. Such slaves may only get free by quitting medicine. Where's the dignity in forcing healthcare team members to become morally complicit in someone's death? Death on demand legislation allows healthcare practitioners to opt out of killing without retribution. But team members don't get to veto the doctor's decision to kill. Team trust is corrupted. Teams opposing death on demand will still facilitate suicide by referring patients to other willing teams. Against their will, many allied health professionals shall be made morally complicit in someone's death. Where's the dignity in expanding the reasons to kill, giving more people ability to kill, and more people being killed? There are now volumes of peer-reviewed medical and legal research, commentary, and news reports showing stunning expansions of the scope of death-on-demand legislation in Europe and North America. In December 2015, European physician Peter Saunders said, "What we're seeing is a gradual widening of the categories of patients to be included, and the lessons are clear. Once you relax the law on assisted suicide, steady extension will follow as night follows day." Where's the dignity in destroying trust between patients and their healthcare providers, insurers, and families? Once the option for death on demand is available, a mist of mistrust will creep over all of medicine. Elderly, disabled, and the socioeconomically disadvantaged will avoid getting medical care, no longer sure of their doctor's motivations. Many Dutch now carry cards stating, "Please, doctor, do not kill me." Will the economics of third-party payers pressure patients to commit suicide? An Oregon couple was denied funds for their chemotherapy, but Oregon did offer to pay for their suicides. When family or friends talk about assisted suicide as my dignified option, is their real concern their time, their treasure? Do I now have a familial duty to die, to kill myself? Where's the dignity in bowing to bureaucrats or bending the rules at the end of life? Where's the dignity in a new bureaucracy taking weeks to authorize your suicide, let strangers review and approve your request if you can get an appointment, and enrolls you on secret registries beyond public accountability? We're told death on demand rules are crafted to be narrow in scope, protect the vulnerable, and safeguard against practitioner abuse. But Dr. Jose Perea recently showed that good intentions fail miserably at effective oversight. Healthcare practitioners have learned to skirt self-reporting regulations to avoid delays, paperwork, and scrutiny. In conclusion, it's undignified and unethical to kill sufferers and call that medicine. Jesus never did that, and he's widely regarded as the great physician. It's undignified and unethical to enslave doctors, make nurses, physician assistants, or pharmacists morally complicit in death, open the Pandora's box of killing, destroy the trust between a patient and those who should care for them, burden the dying with regulations and caregivers with a pressure to deceive. Even if laws facilitating patients killing themselves bear titles like death with dignity or end-of-life options, death on demand will always be undignified and unethical. North Carolina does not need death on demand. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. And our last speaker on this panel, the religious and ethical panel, is Fran Schindler. She's a registered nurse, but she's speaking today on behalf of a group called Final Exit.
Okay, it's very difficult for me to speak sitting down, so I will stand up. I am a representative of Final Exit Network, and I came from the same taproot as Compassion and Choices. We both evolved from the original Hemlock Society, started by a good friend of mine, Derek Humphrey. But first of all, I'm going to tell you a brief overview as fast as I can because I don't want to see those signs flashed at me. I will talk about who we are, where we came from, what our guiding principles are, what we do not do, and what we do. Okay, who are we? We are a small 3,000 member, all volunteer organization. We have no paid staff, no offices. Well, I take it back, a part-time person, 2 part-time people that do database and mailing. We all work out of our homes. So we are an all-volunteer organization, and our guiding principle says that mentally competent adults who are suffering intolerably from an ultimately fatal, untreatable illness have the right to choose, and that is the operative word here, choose, how, when, where, and with whom they will end their life. And we believe that that choice should be free from structure by the law, and actually free from interference by the law, medicine, the clergy, religious organizations, even well-meaning family and friends. This choice is made by us alone and the people that support and belong to our organization. So who we are, what are our guiding principles, where did we come from? The Hemlock Society, which was started in the late 80s by Derek Humphrey. The organization grew and added other organizations. In 2004, there was a dissension. Some people decided they only wanted to lobby for legal change, ergo Compassion and Choices. The other people in the organization said that the legal change will come too late for many of us. We want to continue working one-on-one, face-to-face with people who choose to have our services. So we've got where did we come from, who we are, what do we do? And I'm going to tell you right now one thing, several things, and I want you to remember this. If you don't remember another thing I say, I am going to tell you what we do not do. We do not aid, abet, assist, encourage, solicit anyone to end their lives ever. People that are interested in our services must call us. We do not call you, not ever, ever. So where am I? What do you do? Come from my choices. There are a couple things I could say here in response to one thing, but it's just stuck in my head, so I will have to say it. And that is, if God indeed gave me the gift of life, then I have received that, and if it is truly a gift, when I am given a gift, I can choose to return it, and return it with gratitude. And as far as my personal response to what constitutes a dignified death, I will tell you, I do not need a physician. I do not need to have them participate in anything under the law. There is something called self-responsibility that people don't often think of. And personally, if I get a diagnosis of dementia, I can tell you from my nursing background, the clock starts ticking. And it will tick, and I will be out of here while I have a window of opportunity, because I saw my mother die horribly from dementia. She never talked about death and dying, and she was the nurse. She never had any advance directives, no conversation. So what I've come to know is that people can die by choice, or they can die by chance. Personally, I've got a choice. I know how to do it, I will do it, and have everything I need, and when the time is right, by my choosing, I'm out of here. Thank you.